Hello and welcome to EC Council University, or ECCU. My name is David Oxenhiller. I'm the Vice President here at EC Council University. We'd like to virtually welcome you to our main campus in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the United States of America. The university was founded to advance higher education in cybersecurity. This academic discipline has its core roots in certified ethical hacking, a concept pioneered by the university's founders. EC Council University's chairman and founder, Sanjay Bavisi, believes that cybersecurity professionals must not only have skills and techniques, but they must be educated to step into leadership and management roles in their organizations. This led to the establishment of the Master of Science and Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity degrees that we offer today. The mission of the university is, through quality distance education programs, excellence in teaching and research, and direct connections to the cybersecurity industry, EC Council University aspires to be an educational leader in cybersecurity. Our students of today will become the cybersecurity leaders of tomorrow. The university's programs are accredited by DEAC, the Distance Education Accrediting Commission. DEAC is listed by the U.S. Department of Education as a recognized accrediting agency, as well as acknowledged member of the Council for Higher Education, or CHIA. A cybersecurity degree at ECCU includes but goes beyond the knowledge found in industrial certifications to include important leadership, research, writing, and technical skills. The applied learning model for the practitioner versus the purely research-focused is delivered to be flexible for the working adult, provides a practical application of academic knowledge. Thus, a student at ECCU ends up most often at the end of their program with the three-pronged advantage of industrial certifications, work, project, and applied experience, and an academic degree. Courses are supported by the iLab working environment that provide a safe cyber range environment to practice and apply skills. Welcome to EC Council University, applied higher education for cybersecurity practitioners, accredited, flexible, and online, creating the cybersecurity leaders of tomorrow.
ECCU program helped me get into cybersecurity.
The courses are hands-on.
This master's degree is very well structured.
With balance with personal and professional life.
The staff were very reactive and helpful.
My name is Takahiro Oda. Currently, I work for PayPay Corporation as a cloud infrastructure security engineer.
Hi, my name is Olamide Afolabi. I'm the CEO of Touch and Pay Technologies Limited.
I am Pablo Palacios. I am from Ecuador. I am the program officer for the South American and Spanish-speaking countries of the International Telecommunication Union based in Santiago de Chile.
My name is Antonio Souza. I am from Angola and work for Banco Sol.
Hi, my name is Samba Sidibe. I'm a network security engineer in a leading telecommunication company in West Africa.
So during the program, I got promoted 2 times from the engineer to security analyst, and from the security analyst to cloud security engineer.
Ever since we took the course from EC Council, we're able to be more conscious, more aware. We're able to catch a threat before it starts.
Master's degree in cybersecurity offered me the possibility to expand my view and my technical knowledge in cybersecurity.
I selected EC Council University because of the flexible study option that allowed me to reach my goals with balance with personal and professional life.
I'm more confident in many situations because I have a better understanding of the role of the cybersecurity in modern organizations.
On a scale of 1 to 10, rate ECCU in the following categories, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. ECCU faculty expertise.
9.
10.
10.
10.
Quality of course curriculum.
9.
10.
10.
10.
Staff response time.
8.
9.
10.
10.
Faculty engagement.
10.
9.
10.
10.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's session, The Role of Humans in Cybersecurity, Transforming Vulnerabilities into Strengths. I'm Shilpa Goswami and I'll be your host for the day. We would like to go over a few house rules for our attendees. The session will be in listen-only mode and will last for 1 hour and 30 minutes, out of which the last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to organizers or our speakers, use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio-video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. Our moderator for today's session, Sunil Burki. He has over 27 years of leadership experience specializing in cybersecurity with large corporations in banking, telecom, ITES, software and manufacturing in the Middle East, US and India. Our speaker, Darren Thompson. During his 30 years in the software industry, Darren has worked in various technical and marketing leadership positions. He currently holds the position of VP of Product Marketing at One Identity, a digital identity security provider. Before this, Darren helped CyberCube to define solution propositions and go-to-market strategies as it ventured into cyber insurance marketplace. Darren served as field CTO at Symantec in EMEA for several years, where he was responsible for a team of around 200 technicians and operated as one of Symantec's senior-most evangelists in the field of cloud, IoT, risk management, and security strategy. Darren is published author, his latest book being Delivery Utility Computing, Business-Driven IT Optimization. He was educated in Hertfordshire, UK and holds a certificate of higher education in social science as well as several IT-related qualifications, including ITIL practitioner and management of risk accreditation from the UK office of Berman Thomas. Darren's interest and research into intersections of traditional psychology, criminal, and modern cyber defense give him unique perspective on how we should be defending our organizations and institutions from cyber threats in the 21st century. Our next speaker, Mary Agee, she called herself an accidental marketer as she started her career as a software engineer and then carved a niche for herself as a tech marketer in the cybersecurity industry. Over a career spanning 20 years, Mary has worked with a vast portfolio of cybersecurity vendors and channel partners in the EMEA region. Espousing her passion for tech and zeal for creativity, she has launched a myriad of strategic marketing campaigns and events in MENA region for technology vendors through the channel. An award-winning channel, marketing champion, and ardent cybersecurity enthusiast with a keen interest in human factors and as aspiring cybersecurity, Mary is currently an independent cybersecurity marketing consultant. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you all.
Thank you, Shilpa. I am quite excited and honored to be in this panel with these two eminent speakers. Darren Thompson was my manager while at Symantec. I learned a lot from him. A person with a lot of clarity on his thought, very forward thinking. And he is also a criminologist with an understanding of the psychology related aspects when in the adversarial space. And Mary Agee, a good friend of mine, and I always used to go to her asking the narratives and positioning of various topics, especially the cybersecurity side. And she has taken up an academic master's in this field of psychology, which is an exciting news because it's an emerging field and people are taking a full-time course on that. It was great to see that. And considering that, it's a great honor to be with these two eminent persons. So let me start with the current state we are talking about. We are currently in a boundaryless, heterogeneous digital terrain with blind trust connected 24/7, having an information overload, fake news, influencers influencing our narratives. We are in a totally different world than the physical world we always came to. We are also seeing a lot of pattern where the in-house, the technical engineers and the users, even the home users, are having a pattern and they are falling for a victim of the cybersecurity frauds or the scams. We are also seeing highly motivated advisories globally. They're luring a lot of enterprise and individual users for their objectives. So there is a total cyber distraction which is currently happening on that. And the question now is, how is it relevant in this, not only on the cyber security realm, but on the general safety also that. Darren, do you mind taking that view on that? The question is, currently we believe that we are in a digital distraction era. And how does that influence every user's day-to-day activity on the cyberspace and also on the cybersecurity space?
Yes, so that I understand your question, Sunil, you're asking the impact of psychology on cybersecurity? Yeah, well, I think it's all... Sorry, go on.
Darren, the question is on the current scenario of distraction in the cyberspace, because a lot of activities are happening. So before we getting into the psychology part, do you believe that there is a lot of distractions and people are confused on the cyber terrain?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors there, Sunil. So thank you for having me along, first of all. So distraction's an interesting word, you know. So let's take a look at what cybersecurity looks like right now. You know, I've worked for most of my career working for cybersecurity vendors, typically software companies that have provided some kind of solution to the market. You know, this has been a very popular and crowded space now for some time. You know, I think overcrowded, and the scenario that I see in many of the organizations that I work with at strategic level is there are actually just too many tools. So you know, in cybersecurity, there are so many things that you can do with technology in order to try to defend your organization or defend yourself. That in itself is very, very confusing for many organizations. So first of all, we have the dynamic of a very crowded marketplace, lots and lots of software companies, you know, vying for your attention if you're running security operations in a business. And really, it's a very difficult process to go through what your priorities should be in that regard. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the threat landscape has become ever more complicated. And so, you know, we're worried about a multi-dimensional thing here. This is not a simple threat landscape. This is not typically a simple risk register. There are many actor types. We'll probably get into some of those on the criminal side. There are many vectors to worry about. There are many attack surfaces that we need to be concerned about. And so we have a very, very complex threat landscape and a very, very complex landscape of technology that we could potentially access. And then in addition to all of that, and the topic of this discussion, is that I think we are undervaluing the social sciences here to the point where an obsession on those technologies, you know, and getting perhaps too deep on any one of our attack vectors can actually distract us from the real issues. So just recently, I've encountered a couple of organizations that I've been working with where ironically, the very security tools that have been applied to defend the organization are masking a problem. There is so much data that's being driven from these tools that the cyber defenders in the organization are missing the attack. And so, yeah, this is absolutely distraction, to go back to your initial word. So a very complex environment from a people, process, and technology perspective. And I think to sum that up with the distraction word is quite an astute way of thinking about it.
Thanks, Darren. Mary, what's your view on that?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on. Yes, so I would like to talk about it from a cyber psychological point of view. So we are essentially living in an attention economy, so to speak, because everything that we do is online, and the way online platforms are designed are, you know, designed for distraction, if you like, because the algorithmic bias, right? So you know very well, the moment you get online, search for something, the next day you have a barrage of advertisements coming up, you know, asking you to do this and that, and would you like to buy this? So it is by design meant to be distracting. Now, how is this relevant to human behavior and our behaviors you know, related to security? It is again going back to the lack of focus, distraction, because the moment you're online, there is an algorithmic selection going on based on your search, history, based on your likes, dislikes, your, footprint that you left on the previous, visit to that particular website, right? So there are two things that is driving this, and I don't think it's going to change, because it would affect a lot of big companies, organizations, and even nation states, because first of all is a surveillance capital. Everything that we do online is being recorded, and the ad revenue to these giants, tech giants, come from the surveillance capital and the data that is collected. The more a person stays on a platform, whether it is YouTube, social media, whatever, that adds to their potential to earn more ad revenue. So, the algorithms are designed in such a way that you are meant to stay on. Like, for example, previously we didn't have, when you went to the YouTube, you didn't have a prompt which said, people also watch this, So this is now built into the algorithm, which makes you want to go to the next video and the next video and the next video. So by design, you're meant to stay on the platform to increase the ad revenue proportions of tech giants. So all this, the moment you get online, all this is going on without even your conscious awareness, right? So it is affecting our focus, it is affecting our distraction levels. And when it comes to cybersecurity behaviors, you can imagine, because you're probably unconsciously clicking on links and doing, it's increasing your risky behavior when you're at work, at home, wherever you're online. So it is a dangerous thing, but it is what it is.
Thanks, Mary. In a similar note, if you look at, we always created policies and the enforcement based on punitive controls, saying that, okay, if you don't do it, your appraisal will be impacted, or I will sack you, or I'll cut your salary. That's how all the policies was always designed. But in the new world, that punitive approach is not working out. And earlier we told people not to do, the volume was limited, it was a physical world, things were much easier. But on the cyber world, there is nothing much is happening. And as I understand, this new science of cyber psychology is picking up. And the companies, everybody is recognizing the fact that cyber psychology is essential for our journey ahead on that. So what do you look at, or how do you define, or what is your view on cyber psychology? Darren, can you just give your understanding of cyber psychology?
Yeah, well, first of all, we should perhaps begin with the fact that the cybersecurity world, if you like, that domain, over the years has largely grown as has been made up of technologists like myself and yourself. And so if we think about the majority of the people that work in the cybersecurity profession, whether they be consultants or whether they work for software companies or hardware companies of some kind, they are probably technical in nature. And I think it would be fair to say that in the past 30 years or so, primarily what those people and those organizations have been focused on is technology, because that's what they're interested in. Now, it is also a fact that at the root of every cyber attack is a person or a group of people. And the targets for those cyber attacks are, again, people, fundamentally, credentials. And so, it has struck me for some time now that we are missing a huge component, really, of what we should be focused on to properly defend ourselves from cyber attack. I think when it comes, what I found in the past 6 or 7 years or so in my research and work in the area of cyber psychology, is that the social sciences, not least of which psychology, but also the social science of criminology, which is a subcomponent of that, can and should be applied on both the criminal hacker side and also on the user side. So there are many, many things that we can use the tools and best practices in psychology for to better understand the attacker. There are also many principles in psychology that we can use to better understand and in many cases educate the user, the consumer of IT services. So the first thing to say is that there are applications of psychology on both sides. I would say, we cannot properly understand how to educate our users and support those users without understanding the users themselves. Technology is an important component in any solution, but without properly understanding who we're trying to educate, then I would suggest that we are missing a component. Similarly, we cannot effectively defend ourselves from attackers that we don't understand. If we don't understand where an attacker is coming from in terms of their motivations, their likely behavioral patterns, the techniques that perhaps they're likely to employ, whether they're politically motivated or financially motivated, how old they are, who they are, what demographic they make up. Unless we understand all of that, I would suggest that it is impossible to effectively defend from that attacker. And then the last thing I would say, and where I've seen effective use of psychological principles here, has been in social engineering. So social engineering is a major component of the attack surface right now, the attack landscape, the threat landscape. At the very most basic level, phishing attacks are essentially a very simplified example of social engineering. Well, guess what? Social engineering is not a cybersecurity thing. Social engineering has been around for thousands of years, and we know a lot about it. And the very principles that we are documented in the social sciences can help us to understand that particular attack vector. So there are a few examples of how psychology and social science can be applied to the business of cybersecurity.
Got it. Thanks. Mary, from an academician point of view, how do you look at cyber psychology?
Could you repeat the question, please? Sorry. Academic perspective.
From an academic perspective on cyber psychology, how do you look at it?
Yes. Yeah, got it. So like Darren said, right? So Darren and I, we are both interested in the cyber security part of cyber psychology, obviously, because this is our industry. But cyber psychology as a discipline is very, very vast, and it is a very interdisciplinary kind of a discipline, and it is being now acknowledged. Earlier, like NLP, it was considered as a sub-discipline of psychology, but it is now evolving. BPS, British Psychology Society, has actually accepted it as a proper discipline. Right? So that is good news. Now, anything that we have done, so psychology has been around for a long time, and anything that we have done, and we all know that it's study of human mind and behavior, given a particular setup, right, in a particular circumstance. Now, everything that we've done offline previously in our lives, in our pre-internet lives, is now online. Everything is digital, right? So now cyber psychology, so in effect, is studying the psychology of human interactions, how it affects the digital world, and how the digital world affects our behavior, and how it is changing the way we communicate, how it is changing the way we behave. So to give you some interesting questions that cyber psychologists usually ask, and this is not really related to cyber security, but just to give you an idea of the vastness of the academic research that is there. So some of the interesting questions that cyber psychologists ask are like, do violent gaming induce violent behavior, right? So logically, we tend to think, yeah, of course, kids, we are scared. We would be scared to give, guns to kids, even if it is a toy gun. We would think, oh no, I don't want him to associate gun and that kind of behavior. The same thing, but looks like, as per the research, that it doesn't. So there are lots of good things and bad things that we can look at for every interaction or every domain that falls under cyber psychology, right? There is another question, like when it comes to cyberbullying. Now, bullying, we all know, has been happening for years, like Darren said, all the things that we did offline. Now, when it comes to online bullying or cyberbullying, what is happening to the human mind, right? So to quote Professor Barry Aiken, She says, there is something called online disinhibition effect, right? So when you're online, there is anonymity to your interactions, right? So I'm Mary, but I could assume the identity of an anonymous person, and that gives me a godlike power, if you like. That's how Professor Mary Aiken puts it, right? So that makes me less inhibited in indulging in activities, behavior, rash behavior, or like bullying, which I may not do when I'm face to face with people. So this online disinhibition is a very interesting topic that is covered and researched by cyber psychologists. So academically, there are so many things. So it finds applications in every industry you can think of, because everything is digital. Let's say healthcare, digital well-being, marketing. I'm a marketer, and I can see so many applications, from the color you choose, from the layout of the website, how you can direct with subtle prompts how a visitor to a website behaves, right? So it is vast, it's huge, and it's very interesting because we are keeping human in the center of all these applications and everything that is happening, and monitoring and trying to understand the interactions that we have with the digital world, and trying to help as well, like to tweak. There is mobile addiction that we are researching and trying to find answers to, how we can help, what kind of interventions can be introduced. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to a simple question, but it's very exciting and very interesting. Sorry to meander about it.
No, very relevant, Mary. Darren, one question. Earlier, you mentioned about an attacker psychology or an end user psychology. If you look at the cyber world or the technology world, a large majority of all the incidents are created because of self-induced wounds, like omissions, errors, ignorance by a technical guy, the software developer or an administrator, and they are also creating a lot of mistakes. While one end, the attacker may be motivated with financial gain and all of that thing. This set of people are technical savvy people. They come, this is their task, but they keep on making mistakes or misconfigurations. And that is also one of the foundational problem of many attacks. So since you come a lot from a software development, product engineering side also, does the companies review this type of behavior psychology when they are designing a product or when they are doing it?
Well, the broad answer is no. So as I said earlier, if you think about the average sort of engineering and development, product management type functions in a software business, I'm exposed to those environments every day of my life, and the amount of social science conversations that go on in those environments is next to zero. Fair to say that most of the ones that happen around me right now, I've started. And so I would say that the principles that Mary has kind of discussed there, and trying to head off at the pass, as it were, some of those errors and omissions that you referenced, perhaps when it comes to coding, for example, that's not really a discussion that's going on in any of the software environments that I've been exposed to. There is this concept of sort of what I call inside out security, which is about, from the very beginning of a very first discussion about an idea, before we get near code or anything similar, from that very first whiteboard, that very first design conversation, from the first specification, right through to design and coding and testing, etc. The principle of inside out would be, we are always having conversations about safety. We are always having conversations about security. Now, that is right now a principle that can be aspired to. I don't see very much evidence of it in actual security operations. I have seen a few positive steps forward, though. So we do see more and more risk officers in organizations who are involved in every aspect of the business, including the development of software. And so that's, as far as I'm concerned, a positive step forward. you know, I think many organizations, you know, I'm kind of, to a certain extent, I have a biased perspective here because I've only ever worked for security software organizations. But I do think that security by the general application provider has started to be seen as a competitive differentiator. In other words, you know, if our technology is not only, you know, very functional and provides a service of some description, but it's also, we can also, you know, advertise the fact that this is a very secure environment, and we care about protecting our users, we care about protecting our users' data, for example. This has recently been seen as partly a competitive differentiator. Now, regulatory compliance around things like GDPR is pushing this agenda as well. So, you know, this is not entirely altruistic. This is partly about being able to do business. But again, I do think that these are positive steps forward. My general view here, though, is that there needs to be an injection of the social sciences to the very core of the development of applications. And that would really mean, on the ground, that would mean that, you know, if there are 0.0001% of people in those environments right now who are experts in psychology, that number should be bigger. I don't know what the number should be, but it should definitely be bigger. And that would be, you know, I think having people there to influence that behavior would really help push that agenda forward. So again, long answer to your question, but, you know, we're not doing enough at the core, at the root cause, to prevent users from making mistakes moving forward. We're not doing enough to make sure that code, you know, is absent of those mistakes as well. And again, that's because we are technically fixated. There's not enough discussion about people, how they behave, why they get tired, when when mistakes are made, why mistakes are made. Those aren't typically conversations that happen in software companies.
I think that may be the way forward, because currently there will be a shortage of cyber psychologists, and at some point of time we may see they influencing a lot on development side of that. Now, Darren spoke about the back-end development of the engineering side of it. You earlier mentioned about the selecting the color, the layout, and even when you are designing a website. Now, have you ever worked on or looked at saying that how does the security aspect from a user, the different users come into to access your site or the resource? How do you consider that? So how will you understand and consider the behavior of different stakeholders coming there from a security aspect of it? Or have you seen that, or is it something totally new coming up?
No. So before I go to the answer of that question, Sunil, I would like to add one more point to what Darren was talking about, because I remember we spoke about this a while back, about why do developers or why do people go on and, you know, repeat the mistakes that they do. And from a psychological point of view, Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, it could be because of you know, something called cognitive dissonance, because, you know, it's like you've seen this is the reason to a particular error in the past, and you are the one who developed it. So you have this conflicting feeling within you, thinking that, you know, it has to be this reason or it has to be this. So you're kind of supporting. It's like, to put it in simplistic terms, imagine our dads buying, you know, a particular model of a car, and then you don't hear the end of it at the dinner table where he keeps promoting the car, when we all know there is a different model that is much better than his. So it is like your loyalty built in for something that you have invested in. So that could be one of the cognitive dissonance from a psychological point of view, could be an explanation for the point that you raised, Sunil. You know, coming to another point that Darren was talking about, you know, the psychology. I recently read a research paper. Again, this is research is done by cyber psychologists, where they are, in fact, I mean, there are a good number of people, cyber psychologists, who are thinking about the whole security domain as well. And there is a paper released where they are talking about bringing in psychology as a discipline to cybersecurity students, which is good news, Darren, because we know how important it is. And they were discussing about the pedagogical differences in teaching something like psychology, which is more of an arts, but now we understand that it's more of a science. So the way it is taught and the way it is perceived is also different. So there are good things happening in the background. That's just a statement I wanted to kind of underline what Darren was talking about. Now, coming back to you, Sunil, let me just repeat the question because I went down a tangent. You were asking about the security factors affecting the users.
We heard from Darren what is the consideration while developing a solution. Now, you from a marketing perspective, you have worked on the influencing behavior, all of that thing from the front end portion of it. Do you normally has come across the consideration of behavior, the psychology for the users from a security aspect?
So in an ideal world, we should all think about security no matter what job role we are in. And marketing is a very important division or a function in which security should play an important role, because we are the brand guardian. So from a reputational point of view, or from the communication point of view, because cybersecurity is a lot of communication. I mean, it involves a lot of communication, right? So when we communicate, to make sure that it is done in the right way, using the right logic, using the right words to communicate the importance of cybersecurity or a marketing event. Now, coming back to the functionality of what you were talking about from a security perspective, right? So we need to make sure. So, some of the most common issues with security and marketing communications are links, right? People need to be careful. So when we put in buttons or links or call to actions on an emailer, for example, we need to make sure that it is as per the brand guidelines of the organization. And if you have a relationship with the organization and you've developed a trust factor with an organization, you need to be extremely careful to make sure that the links that you use, or if there are any outgoing links, to make sure that the source of the links, like so there is this thing about people tend to think, looking at the website, you see the lock and they think the website is trusted, but that is not what it means. It means that the protocol is encrypted. It doesn't mean that the website is to be trusted, right? So nowadays, phishing people are even using that to lure people. People tend to see it as HTTPS and they think it is secure. So as a marketing person, when we use links or other other instruments to take the user away from your protected environment, we need to be very careful from the back end and the front end to make sure that it is all trusted. The certificates are updated and the user is protected.
So Mary, the reason I asked, Mary, the reason I asked is, if you look at, people are very paranoid because of the fake sites and all of that thing. Now the utility is going high because every organization, every transaction is now online. So people are getting used to that. But somewhere, because when you know that there is a fake site or a scam happening on the name of my company, the communication part is still missing, or the thing. So that part of that. Darren, now coming back to you, I was always curious about this question. Since you worked a lot on the cyber adversarial criminal activities from the research point of view, what is the psychology of the cyber criminals? And ransom is going very, very high, and it's no stop is going to happen very soon. So if you can give some light on that, it will be great.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's probably worth considering for a second here. So how can, again, the social sciences help us to understand the criminal? And it's worth just thinking about that, because there are many ways in which we can learn more about criminal behavior and therefore defend ourselves better, by applying principles of criminology and psychology to the attacker. So the first one of those would be really around sort of what I would sort of categorize as detection and identification, right? So by analyzing past behaviors and techniques of cyber criminals, whether they be individuals or in gangs, we can start to identify patterns and indicators that can help us to detect future attacks. So that's just really the analysis of behavior, the analysis of patterns in that behavior, the analysis of techniques. The second area would really be around sort of attack prediction. So once we've built some, let's say, baselines around behavioral analysis, and in particular around in security, what we call tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. When we start to build some baselines around that, and we start to get sort of understandings about typical behavior, we can start to predict and perhaps present attacks as they happen, or even before, when they happen. And so there is a very interesting coming together very often of psychology and technology. This is part of what we call threat analysis, and it's part of what we call threat intelligence. Threat intelligence historically, once again, was very, very technical in nature. It was what's happening with this IP address, and what, now there's much more of, okay, we know that there are patterns of behavior in this criminal gang, and when we see that happen, it's very likely we're going to see an attack, right? So now we're starting to, employ principles of psychology to help with prediction. The next area would be around kind of threat detection. So again, behavioral analysis can be particularly useful in detecting insider threats. We should never forget that some of the criminals that we're talking about, and I am right now talking about criminals as opposed to people making mistakes, the errors and omissions piece, but there are criminals inside companies. They work for our companies. Very often they are joined in some way with external actors as well, but we should never ever neglect the fact that there may be people on the inside of our business that do not need to steal credentials in order to do harm. And so again, behavioral analysis of our own users can be incredibly useful, to find out where those people may be, and are there behaviors going on that are not acceptable in some way, and that would indicate perhaps we have a malicious insider. We mentioned threat intelligence, so now these behavioral analysis patterns are becoming ever more important in the mosaic of kind of threat intelligence. And then lastly, on the forensic side, when we're deconstructing, unfortunately, much of the work that I do and my fellow professionals do happens to be after the event. So something bad happens, and now we've got to pick up the pieces and get a business back on its feet as quickly as possible. That's partly to do with forensics, and to eliminate the psychological part of the forensic process would be a huge mistake, if for no other reason than the lessons that we can learn about potential future attacks to once again feed into that threat intelligence piece. So that's just how we can. Those are some of the principles that we can use to understand attackers. Now let's very briefly talk about attackers. So I spend my life looking at the threat landscape. I spend a lot of time in the cyber insurance world. And cyber insurance are very tuned into why are people attacking and who are they and who do we need to be most conscious of. And I think most people in this audience would be very conscious of the fact that already that largely, mostly the serious cyber attackers that are out there, whether they be criminal gangs or individual lone wolves, are mostly financially motivated. So mostly what people are after, guess what, is money. No surprises there. That's what ransomware is all about. That is what taking data hostage is all about. It's extracting money of some description, right from phishing scams all the way through to large ransomware attacks. It's about finance. The other thing that I can tell you the insurers worry about, though, is politically motivated attackers as well, right? So, how can we affect public opinion? How can we manipulate perhaps public opinion using cyber techniques? And we've seen well-documented evidence of elections around the world potentially being tampered with. That would be one example. We've seen hacks to critical infrastructure, which is normally fundamentally to undermine whatever regime is in place in that particular territory. And so that would be the other major part of the criminal fraternity. And again, we wouldn't understand most of what I just said if it wasn't for the application of social science to the technical attributes of understanding the attackers. So this is another reason why what we're talking about today is so important.
Thanks, Darren. So that is very valid. We currently have technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and there is an openness between the fraternity of sharing the information, what type of attack came, more research insights are available. I think what is missing is the intervention of a psychologist to map things out. I think that will be one of the areas we will see moving forward. Maybe the question is, we always talk about communication is key. And if you look at the companies or enterprises, they keep on sending awareness mailers. Every nook and corner you have posters, you have quizzes running, you have every type of events happening. But still there is a perception that it is not successful. Only a limited influence is happening over there. How do you see the psychology intervention which can change the way currently it is working?
So it is not a perception, it is truth. You know, we do have facts and figures that say that training alone or technology alone is not the answer to, you know, help human beings become more resilient in their organizations. And as an organization, if your you know, security education, training and awareness SETA programs should work, there has to be a huge paradigm shift in the way we communicate internally as well as externally. Now, we are slowly talking, you know, entering the training and awareness, you know, topic within this discussion. Now, what usually happens in organizations is we tend to either look at this whole human risk, I don't like calling it that, but the human factor of cybersecurity, we tend to look at it from a, you know, tend to look at it as a technical problem or a problem related to the way we train our employees. But that, you know, if you take a step back and think about it, I think most of the time, most organizations, what we tend to do is we directly go into the training and awareness phase without looking at you know, the phases that need to be taken care of before we reach that situation. Now, if you look at it from a psychological point of view, right, everything we do as human beings are driven by motivation, opportunity, and the ability to do it, right? So if, first of all, to be able to do something, you know, to join a gym and to, you know, to make a change in my lifestyle, I need to have that motivation. Something would have triggered it, right? To be motivated to make that change. Then I should have the opportunity, the means, you know, to kind of, you know, like, you know, it should be closer to my house and, you know, different factors that, you know, makes it an opportunity for me to, you know, better myself. Then the ability to do that, probably if it is too far or if it is too expensive, probably I don't have the means and ability to do it. So these three factors are psychologically, you know, it's like behavioral theories, actually, you know, it can be summed into these three things that drive human behavior, right? Now, going back to the organizational training and awareness situation that you were talking about, right? We need to first of all identify what are the risks. Now, since we are talking about human factors, what are the main risks? How can we prioritize that? So the homework has to be done initially to identify the kind of risks, and it has to. It's quite an extensive you know, area that we need to do. So, but if you do that first, when you come to the training and awareness phase, it's going to be much easier because it has to be a role-based analysis, because the risk that I bring to the you know, infrastructure as a marketing person is completely different from the risks that an accountant or a CFO or a C-level executive can bring to the mix, right? So it has to be a role-based analysis of risks and how we can prioritize. Now, it depends upon the damage or the impact of the risk versus the probability of it happening within an organization. So it's like it's quite simple. It's a graph, right? So there is the probability of the risk happening versus the impact it has on the organization, and that decides how we prioritize risk. And then we need to look at the behaviors that we need to tweak so that this risk can be mitigated or at least reduced. So then we only after that should we enter the communications, training, awareness, everything that we put together within an organization as a protocol or as a program. So we understand the risks, we prioritize it, and we look at the behaviors that we want to change so that these risks can be mitigated or reduced, and then we deploy the various training initiatives or the awareness campaigns or behavioral programs and awards and recognition, whatever that encompasses the program that we want to roll out. It has to be done only after this homework is done. Then it becomes effective. Then the communication becomes more personal, because when you're communicating to the marketing department, probably you're talking about how data should be protected, how data is handled, the kind of different ways the databases should be used, and as Darren mentioned, the GDPR repercussions of using data incorrectly. So whereas for finance it could be a lot of other things related to financial document sharing and sensitivity of information that is being shared. So yeah, it has to be a more personalized, role-based program that we run after we do this homework.
And
Mary,
I'd love
you
to add something. Neil, if I may, I'd love to add something.
Yes, please.
I could not agree more with what Mary is saying there. We see too much one-size-fits-all kind of approach to training, awareness, whatever we want to call it. Just to layer on to something that Mary was saying there, my suggestion would be not only should we be thinking about education and awareness for cyber on a role-based basis, right, because of the different interactions with data, etc., we should look at it through the lens of a criminal as well. The way a criminal looks at a marketeer in an organization is different to the way they would think about attacking a CEO. It would be different again to the way they would think about attacking a contractor that has, perhaps a 2-week contract in the organization, which would be different again to how they would think about attacking a receptionist, right? Now, all of those are legitimate targets. There are different reasons why I might attack an organization in every one of those contexts. Believe me, receptionists are really, really useful for a cyber attacker, right? And so are CEOs and so are contractors for different reasons. But wouldn't it make sense, given what Mary's comments, wouldn't it make sense that as we try to make those users, those different types of folk, aware of the risks that they may be exposed to and the ways that they can help protect their organization, wouldn't it make sense to do that through the eyes of an attacker? Because that is the very risk we're trying to mitigate. I find a lot of training exercises to be very inward facing and insular. It's all about our organization and our people and our data and what might happen to us, as opposed to what is going to happen to us through the eyes of a criminal. And again, this is not technical. This is psychology. This is criminology. So yeah, I just wanted to add that to Mary's comments, because I think they're very, very relevant, and that might be just another idea for people to consider.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Mary.
Could I add one more point to that? That's very poignant to cyber psychology research as well, right? There have been cases that have been cracked by analyzing the kind of languages that are used in public forums, right? So what Darren was talking about, right? Cyber adversaries always look at the psychological aspects or the psychological phenomena, processes that is going on in a user's mind when he or she is interacting online, right? So, but again, going back to the cognitive dissonance, this particular paper that I read was very interesting, Darren, because it talks about cognitive dissonance in cyber adversaries as well, because they are doing all these things for whatever benefits that they have, but at the same time, they are in conflict with themselves. So they tend to use language that is very aggressive, using bad languages, being aggressive, flashing messages, using euphemisms, and belittling the person that he is trying to victimize. So cyber psychologists who are looking at these conversations online, that is an indicator for them to flag it to the authorities, saying that there could be a potential adversary here trying to cyberbully or get into this person's head and create make him do things that he is not supposed to do online. So it's a very, very interesting thing, thinking like we've been saying this in the industry, think like an attacker. But now I've been looking at everything differently now that I've started looking things from a cyber psychological point of view. So it's I just wanted to add that it's very interesting.
Yeah, and without taking us down the AI rabbit hole, which we probably don't have time for today, this is one of the areas of concern for me, Mary, because you're absolutely right. So historically, what we've seen in, for example, phishing attacks has been, somewhat of a bombastic, approach to the user, and a reliance to a certain extent on the particularly uneducated users, clicking on the wrong link. So what's required on the attacker side there is more finesse, is more nuance in language. Okay, that's where AI is starting to help. So we're already starting to see machine learning and AI applied, for example, to phishing attack language. Now what do we have? We have language engines that can analyze everything we've ever written as human beings, creating automatically a phishing message, which is nuanced, right? Can even refer to people's family and friends, perhaps, things that they've been talking about on Facebook, for example, right? And that's one of the scariest, applications of AI right now that I can see. There's lots of talk of, is going into an AI war with defenders versus attackers, but on the ground, what I'm seeing is a very, very applicable and relevant and useful technique being applied by attackers, which is the use of ChatGPT and language models to finesse, to your point, that slightly bombastic language, so that it is essentially much more effective and fools many more of us because we don't recognize it for what it is.
While you said it's interesting, useful, it is also very scary, and that's the way things are going to move forward on that. So we all agree the fact that current way of communications and interventions are not working out. So do you think, so what do you propose to move ahead? Do we need a chief human risk officers and say tools like UBA? Many companies are using it, and it is a techie at the end looking at a UBA screen on user behavior. I don't know whether they purely understand that psychology on how user behaves and predict things out on that. So do you think it should be psychology, sociology has to be part of the design, and the human risk officers should start coming into play? We have another 7-8 minutes, so quickly, if you can just give your thought on that. How do you see this moving forward? Darren, if you can start with.
Yeah, certainly. So I think I want to go briefly back to the education piece, because for me there are a few obvious omissions in the industry right now. So yeah, honestly, to be slightly controversial, from my perspective, with a few notable exceptions, the cybersecurity industry has failed to take the correct approaches when it comes to educating non-technical users of IT, which is most users, by the way. I mean, something those of us in the cybersecurity field often forget is that the people that are using applications and technology are not us. They are my mother, and they're non-technical users. They really don't care about the technical intricacies and what an HTTPS thing means and what an IP address is. They don't care. They've got a job to do. They have objectives to reach, and they just want to use technology to do that. So we've missed, largely speaking, we have created one-size-fits-all tick box exercises designed by technical people with an expectation that everybody that ever gets involved with them are technical. And that's wrong, clearly, right? So there are some things that we're going to have to do to move away from that model. We are seeing the green shoots of promise there. So for example, I would say an educative technique that it has been effective would be phishing simulation. So there are solutions out there that allow us to produce a fish, and kind of use that on our users and educate them through simulation. I think that's a great example of simulation is essentially part of psychology. That allows us to kind of move people in the right direction and make them experience what it might feel like when something bad happens. And I think that's a good example. So there are a few of those sorts of things around. For me, though, in education, there needs to be much more simulation. We also can gamify a lot more. Human beings react really well to competition. They react really well to kind of peer analysis and ranking tables and a bit of fun, and so gamification, I think, is a huge part potentially of where we need to go with education here. Mary's already made very good points about this. We can't just apply this to everybody the same way. This has got to be role-based, and I overlaid onto that. I think we should look at it at least partly from the eyes of the criminal, and we need to do much more coaching as well. So there will always be people in the organisation that understand this better than others, and we should use those people to to help the others forward, right? So there are some sort of principles in education that I think can help. Mary and I had an interesting discussion about a week ago around the psychological principle of nudging. So for those of you that don't know what nudging is creating either visual or maybe audio cues that kind of nudge people in the right direction towards good behavior. We understand in technology, we have a lot of data that surrounds our users. We know a lot in a real-time basis about what's going on, what a user is doing, what applications they're accessing, what they're clicking, why they're clicking it, what their job functions are. Are we under attack? These are all things that we know from threat intelligence. There is no reason at all why we can't apply nudging techniques to our software to make a user feel something. This is not about clicking a certain button or closing an application down. It's about you might be under threat right now. Think differently about where you're going, and that could be the color of a window. It could lots of things that we can apply. So that would be the first thing. That's specifically on education. On communication, for me, really there are kind of a few things here. We need to see more top-down approaches. So from the board level, I think it's absolutely vital that promoting a security-conscious culture is taken very, very seriously. And that can't just be, a once-a-year email from the CEO that expresses how important cybersecurity is. It's going to be more than that. And really, I think it needs to filter down from the board. So every vice president and director needs to carry a mandate to make sure this is an agenda item in team meetings and make sure that this is part of a working culture. And that really sort of fostering this idea of personal responsibility around cyber, I think, is incredibly important. And I think language is key. Again, I keep coming back to the fact that most of my profession are technical. We even see problems at the board level where the chief information security officer finds it hard to articulate to a board of directors why it is they need that money to invest in cyber. And that's a language problem, and there's a lot that we can do, I think, at board level and at all levels of the organisation to improve the way we communicate with common language that doesn't alienate anybody that isn't 30 years in the profession like I am, because that's most people. That's most people in the business. So I think that's really important.
Thank you, Darren, for that. My last question, because we are almost time now. So when I started my career in cybersecurity around 25 years back, there was only firewall guy and then an antivirus guy. Okay, these are the only two roles people used to play, even part-time time. Now there are more than 100 different type of roles within cybersecurity. And how do you see the psychologist coming into this picture? Because I have seen chartered accountants coming in, analysts coming in, statisticians coming in, lawyers coming in, all I have seen on that. Now we are talking about psychologists and criminologists coming in, sociologists coming into this domain. Mary, what's your view on that? How that career is going to shape up?
I think, Sunil, it should be the other way around. Instead of a psychologist coming into cybersecurity field, I think cybersecurity people should be trained in psychological aspects, especially behavioral change, because to be able to secure an organization. I think this is like a conclusion, right? We have the best technologies. Like I started my career exactly, when Norton antivirus was the biggest thing in the market, right? So we know that, we go way back, right? So yeah, so we have the best technology available. We've got a lot of processes and compliances, GRC factors in place, controls introduced. So all that is taken care of. But with all these things, if the human factor is not incorporated into each of this, design, like, there was a time when there was DevOps. Now we have DevSecOps. In the same way, we need to shift left and bring in the human aspect into everything that we are planning within an organization, right? So what I would say is, yes, to answer to your previous question, there has to be a dedicated human risk management person. It can be a security person doubling up, but it has to be a one person responsibility to make sure that all these dots, whether it is communication, whether it is getting leadership buy-in, whether it is reporting, whether it is budgeting, because all these training and everything requires budgeting. So yes, there has to be a dedicated person in every organization that is serious about security to develop that security culture. In fact, not developing a security new, because people tend to get jittery when it is something new. We need to make sure that security culture becomes the company's culture. Security should be part and parcel of the company's culture, because at the end of the day, what does culture do? It brings people together under the umbrella of the mission, vision, values of the organization, and we are all bound by that common goal that we are trying to achieve. Don't you think security should be part of it? Because if that lapse happens, everything is going to fall down, tumble down like a house of cards. So that is where we are going. And I think psychology, like when we were growing up, we were told by our parents, maths is the queen of all sciences. And if you know maths, I still believe it. If you know maths, you're done. You can tackle any sort of problems, any kind of subject. I feel, especially in management, and with the whole digital world versus offline, online world, and the way we are all becoming super digitalized, psychology should become a part and parcel of every role, whether it is a manager, HR obviously, marketing, security foremost. So it has to be the other way around. It is, psychology, part of cybersecurity.
Yeah, Darren, you are one of the pioneers in this field who went from from the cybersecurity side to learn criminology and this aspects of that. So what's your conclusive statement on that? How do you see this career, as a career, the cybersecology coming up?
Firstly, again, I couldn't agree more with what Mary had to say. Like, I'm not suggesting for a second that we parachute clinical psychologists into the data center like that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about, I think, is an expansion of existing roles. And why not, right? I mean, if you think about, I'm just thinking right now about the business of I don't know, sexual equality, or some of the every role in the organization that I've worked, quite rightly, in the last 5 years has gone through training around equality, and diversity and all those sorts of things, right? So we see examples all the time where domains that traditionally were outside of a job description get to be part of the job description. So for the most part, I think that's all we're talking about here. People just need to kind of extend their knowledge to social science. Now, in some exceptions, and I was the CTO, Sunil, as you know, at Symantec, at the point where that organization, which was at the time very forward-thinking organization, decided, with a little bit of encouragement from me, that it might be a good idea to send their CTO through a university course in social science. Now, that was at the time groundbreaking and pretty unusual, but it wasn't hard to see where they were coming from. Like, I was somebody that was working strategically with security departments to better understand the attacks that they were experiencing. And just as we've been talking about today, big part of that has got to be, let's understand the people who are attacking you. That's just criminology. So there are probably certain roles across our security organizations that would need more education than others, right? I would suggest that every CISO on the planet if 5% of their time was spent thinking about, you know, the psychology of the criminals that are attacking them, I think we'd be in a much better place. So to Mary's point, we're not talking about a wholesale change whereby new roles are defined. I think we're talking about the extension of roles. Now, my experience personally has been that that's been incredibly motivating. You know, I was 25 years into almost a pure technology and security career before I embarked on that journey, and frankly, I wanted something new to learn. And so, you know, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think many people in our industry would welcome and embrace the idea of maybe stepping out of their comfort zone slightly and learning some of this stuff. So I think, you know, there's positives all around here. And honestly, I don't talk to many people now that don't, you know, agree in some way with what we're saying. It's going to take a while to change because this is a big industry. You know, budgets are limited. We've all got jobs to do. We're all very busy. But you know, I don't think it hurts to talk about it.
Thanks, Darren. I think a lot is going to happen in the field of this thing. As I mentioned, you are a pioneer in that. Mary, you have taken up the cyber psychology as one of your prominent areas to look into that. EC Council now hosting a platform to talk about cyber psychology. These are all good signs to see that, okay, this is a field which is going to emerge great. So we are almost time from our perspective. I think it's a Q&A session. Shilpa, and for me, it was a great learning. And thank you for that. Shilpa, can you connect back, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you very much, Sunil, Darren, and Mary, for such an insightful and informative session. It was a very interesting webinar, and we hope it was worth your time too. Before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that EC Council University is dedicated to creating superior educational programs that equip graduates to face the latest IT security risks and lead their colleagues in strategically handling those challenges. EC Council University builds on the recognition and strength of its parent corporation. EC Council University provides quality cybersecurity education in over 75 countries. The programs offered by EC Council University are Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity, Master of Science in Cybersecurity, Master of Science in Computer Science, and graduate certificate programs. Professionals who complete a network security course with skills in IT security and infrastructure, switches and firewall installation and administration, and network security management are correlated to above average pay, earning between $66,000 to $112,000 per annum. If you're interested to know more, kindly participate in the poll that will be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon. Shall we start with the Q&A?
Yes, we can.
Sure. Yeah.
So our first question is how cyber psychology is being affected by new technologies such as ChatGPT and TikTok, by Julio Alvarez.
So should I take that?
Can maybe start.
Yeah,
there.
you can please. Yeah, Darren.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so sorry, we referenced ChatGPT earlier. I mean, clearly, you know, part of the challenge of this profession really is that we've always dealt with a very dynamic attack landscape and threat landscape. You know, AI and machine learning and new social technologies, whether that be TikTok or others, are just other examples of how, you know, cyber analysts need to think about that expanding and ever-changing threat landscape. You know, I often say that I work in the fastest and the slowest moving industry on the planet. You know, I remember talking about, you know, doing keynote addresses 10 years ago about the possible effects of AI in the cybersecurity world. And here we are 10 years later, and we're barely noticing a difference. Now, is there going to be an effect? Of course, there's going to be an effect. But I tried to give you earlier, you know, an example in phishing simulation, a phishing attack, for example, of where I'm seeing actual application of artificial intelligence to the attack landscape. Never forget that criminals, the people that we're defending against, are just human beings and organizations much like ours. They are resource constrained in the same way that we are. They have budget constraints in the same way that we do. They play by less rules, I would say. And frankly, they're much better at sharing knowledge than we traditionally have been. But they are just people and organizations. And so, are they excited about AI? Are they excited about how they could potentially use deep fake, for example, in attacks? Of course they're excited, and they're thinking about it all the time. So are we on the defending side. So, whilst we should, keep a watching brief on new technology, it's very important to compartmentalize and prioritize our risk registers according to common sense and what's actually likely to happen. And so, what keeps me in this profession and keeps me interested is the fact that what I'm defending changes every day. Is there a wholesale change every week? No, there's not. We see the invent of technologies like AI and machine learning. We keep a watching brief. We keep a very close eye on what's possible. We stand up defenses accordingly, and we go around the cycle again. That's how it works.
Thank you, Darren, for answering that question. Our next question is, will AI and tools like ChatGPT kill human jobs? How to approach the situation? By Barhan.
I'm not even going to attempt that one. Let me tell you my experience. So I've got 3 children, 2 of which are doing their A-levels right now. And, I've spoken to school teachers about ChatGPT. I think this is just another iteration of the way we go about our lives. My experience, I use ChatGPT quite a lot. At first, I thought it was going to solve all of my problems. I thought I'd be able to get all of my day's work done in 5 minutes because this robot would do it for me. That has proven not to be the case. I'm still here 9 hours a day. I am using ChatGPT and other technologies like it, but I find that my life has turned from traditional coding in many cases to training learning engines. And I would suggest that training learning engines and understanding the principles of machine learning are just another paradigm that people that are being educated should be folding into their education, because it's going to be a very big part of our future. But when it comes to taking my job away, no time soon. I spend most of my time now training this thing to do a fraction of my work for me, and I think that's kind of where we are right now.
Could I add something to that question? Answer. Sorry. Taking the risk, at the risk of sounding naive, come on, believe in yourself a little more. There are lots of things that human beings can do that a machine can never do. For example, creativity. I know that there are lots of news coming out about songs being created using AI, videos being created. It's all amazing, but original thinking, being ingenious, being a typical problem solver. I know this can be argued, it is still contentious, but have a little more faith in humans. That's all I would say.
Thank you, Darren and Mary, for answering that question. Our next question is, as an Indian at the age of 48, can I take admission in PhD at cybersecurity, as I have done postgraduate in maths and IT?
I'm not an education expert, and I don't have a definitive point of view, but my initial gut reaction would be absolutely. There's nothing you can do it at 88 as far as I'm concerned. Why not?
This could be this probably is a question specific to EC Council regarding your programs, but I would like to say, if you have the yearning to learn, nothing is going to stop you. So go for it. But if you want information about the specific programs that is available at the EC Council University, then that is something that you might want to address, Shilpa.
And in my view, I have seen many people doing it at much later ages. One of my mentors, he is doing at the age of mid-60s. and I am doing a PhD right now. I don't think age is a barrier. The only thing is that if you have the motivation to make it happen, should really make it happen. Shilpa.
Thank you everyone for answering that question. Next question, this is for you, Mary. Today we see a lot of virtual interactions, and as you mentioned that providing a god-like status gives us a feel good factor for today's generation, leading to narcissistic behavior, emotional detachment, and various environments, work, home, society overall. So do you think in future this will become a norm and accepted as a behavior? By Raji John.
So there is a lot of studies and research going on about the big 5 personality traits and how that affects a person's behavior online. Like I mentioned, online disinhibition effect is one of the very important factors that decides how people work, behave online. Like you said, we do see very aggressive behavior when a person is online behind the cloak of the website, or being the anonymity, right? Basically, so yes, that it is a trend. It has been going on, and this is something that has kept the politicos, cyber psychologists, clinical psychologists, because there is a lot of trauma attached to attached to victims who go through sexual abuse online, priming online, bullying online, school children. I mean, there is a whole different world there that, as parents, it's really scary to think about. So yes, all these are facts of life, but what I would say is it doesn't have to be the norm. It is about creating awareness, letting people know how to behave online, letting children, especially, nowadays children play with our phones. They have everybody has a iPad. That is one way parents keep children occupied and for a little bit of breather. So the aim is to, there has to be awareness, education, so that people know what kind of behaviors are risky. The stranger danger that we've taught our kids offline has to definitely apply online as well. It's much more dangerous online because you may never find out who the person is. So yes, all this, so that's exactly why cyberpsychology is important, because everything that we experienced offline is now online, but 100 times worse. So it is a very fascinating, that's why, again, going back to the whole studying thing, after 20 plus years as a working person, I've taken a semi break to do this course because it's very fascinating. So education, understanding, and hoping that things will change, people become more aware and careful and responsible online. That's all I can say at this point.
Thank you so much, Mary, for answering that question. We'll take last 2 questions for the day. Our next question is by Hamru Martins. Can you advise on how to approach eccentric developers on accepting change and to not be steadfast in their own designs?
So again, this goes back to the cognitive dissonance that we were talking about, right? So when you're if I understood it correctly, if you're a developer, if you're a person who's been doing things in a certain way, it is easy to stick to that way because in the past it gave good results. And whether it is development, whether it is human behavior, whether it is growth potential, we need to always take a step back, assess how things are, things that were yesterday, especially in technology, things that were popular yesterday is obsolete today. So when you're working, I think it would help to take a step back, assess and see what worked yesterday. Will it work today? Can it be scaled for tomorrow? I think that is a good way of thinking to develop your way of, projecting yourself at work, developing your skills at work, and also learning capabilities. I hope I understood the question right, and that's what I understood.
Thank you,
yeah,
Mary.
I would just add very quickly to that. My own experience has been that, I've worked in sort of areas of where there are lots of developers and various lines of business and various software development departments. And certainly mixing people around has been a technique I've seen adopted very successfully. So not allowing teams to kind of bond so closely that they can never be separated. So using new projects, new ideas, brainstorming techniques, coaching techniques, partnering, shadowing, using all of those techniques to kind of take folk and allow them to be somewhat mobile and organic in their day-to-day functions, not allowing developers to settle into a routine for too long. I mean, and obviously and this is the art of leadership, but there is a balance between people being settled enough that they're focused and they know the job there is to do to reach their objectives, and being too settled so that we lose all agility. I think agile engineering techniques to a certain extent can help here too. So in the company that I work for right now, we've adopted pretty aggressive agile engineering, and so the idea of kind of iterative and incremental development, I think promotes adaptability, it promotes sort of continuous improvement. It does necessarily make people communicate perhaps across teams via Scrum Masters, etc. So I've seen that to be quite effective.
Thank you for answering that question. Our last question is how to ensure a culture of cyber awareness in an organization that has both internal and external staff.
Okay, good. I'll start. I'm sure Darren would have a lot to say. So culture, like we briefly spoke about, it is what brings people together to have shared values, ideals, goals. So security culture has to be woven into the organizational culture, and this can be possible only if the leadership is on board. I mean, we can sit and talk till the cows come home, but unless the leaders are, into it, it has to be top down, like Darren said. So to start a security culture or a change in the culture within an organization, first and foremost, you need to have leadership's blessing, because we all know it becomes so much more easier when the CEO or the C-level executives or even your direct managers are invested in a project that you're working on, because things start moving quickly, you get budgets quickly. So the first thing that needs to be in place is selling the idea to the leadership team, and how you do it is talking in terms of business risk. Security is no longer a divisional prerogative. It is a business problem, or it is a business risk problem. So when you talk to, there is something called managing up, which I used to talk to my team about. When you manage up, it has to be, the questions, the answers have to be framed in a way that speaks to them. For their objectives are different from your objectives as an employee. So what they hear may be completely different from what you're trying to say. So you need to speak, that leadership speak, so that they know why human risk management or having a security first culture within the organization is important, because it is tied in with the bottom line, the top line, the complete existence. Especially if it is a public company, they're answerable to a lot of people. So that is the first step, and then everything else then we can put into place using different frameworks.
Thank you, Mary, for answering that question. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers, Darren and Mary, for answering those questions and for the great knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude the webinar, would you all like to give a small message to our audiences?
I would like to say, because I heard a lot of people interested in this new discipline as cyberpsychology, even people who are thinking of careers in cybersecurity, like we were talking the other day. You don't have to be highly technical, or you don't have to be a coder, right, Darren, to really enter this very exciting field of cybersecurity. I've been here, I myself entered through marketing, for example. So if you have the interest and the yearning to learn, It's a good field to be in, and it's so dynamic. Like Darren said, it's so fast. Things are moving so fast, and there is a socio-psycho-economical part there, and you would be part of something that is, you would be part of a movement. That's the way I see it, because things are changing. It's a new era, and the way we thought, the way we communicated, everything is changing because we are all in a digital world. So you are part of a movement, and you can make a difference. So my message to anybody who is interested in cybersecurity as an industry, there are different pathways, different gateways to enter it. Go for it, and all the best. Thank you very much for having me on board.
Yeah, just to echo Mary's sentiment there, I mean, thank you everybody for giving us your attention today. Yeah, again, just to echo something that Mary said, which is really important, I think, is, you know, this career in cybersecurity is very rewarding. I think we are, as a whole, the industry stands for good. You know, we're trying to protect folk, businesses, individuals, children, and do not for one second think that you need to be, you know, deep technical programmer to contribute to that mission. You know, in my previous incarnation at Symantec, I had 250 staff. None of them were coders, none of them. And so, you know, there's plenty to do. There's lots of jobs. There's, you know, lots of disciplines that you can take. And then the last thing I would say is, for those of you that are or are going to go through some sort of education in cybersecurity, start probing on this psychology stuff with your tutors and with your professors. And if you get blank expressions, you know, maybe push back a little bit, because we all need to encourage, I think, the inclusion of some of the topics that we've been talking today.
So from my side, digital terrain is very turbulent. Traditional way is not working out. We need the interventions of psychologists. The cyber psychologists are the need of the hour. So welcome to the party. We have a lot to do together to make a better, safer cyber world.
Thank you so much, Darren, Mary, Sunil, for the message to our audiences. Before we end the session, I would like to announce our next Cyber Talk session, Navigating the Changing Landscape of Information Security Leadership Best Practices, which is scheduled for June 15, 2023. This session is in panel discussion by Patrick Bostic, Alexander Howard, Dr. Adel Ozakia, Dan Lawman, and Michelle Mayo. To register for the session, please do go and visit our website, eccu.edu/cybertalks. The link is given in the chat section. Hope to see you all on 15th of June. With this, we end the session. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Pleasure having you.